In today's episode, I have the absolute honor of sitting down with Ashley Merryman. Now, Ashley is a two-time New York Times best-selling author. And today we get to dive into one of my favorite books of all time that Ashley wrote. It is Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing. And throughout our conversation, we dive into her principles and research around competition and what the purpose of competition is and where we often get it wrong when it comes to competition. We have a great discussion about understanding the differences between male and female athletes when it comes to competition, and how we as coaches can build environments and experiences where both our male and female athletes can thrive when it comes to competition. And we finally wrap up our conversation about her research on feedback and understanding what the true purpose of feedback is, and how to give effective feedback and when to give effective feedback, and understanding who your audience is when you're giving that feedback. There are so many great takeaways from this conversation, so I can't wait for you all to sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Ashley Merryman. Ashley Merryman, welcome to the Being Champions podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited. So Ashley, what's been really cool about forming a podcast is I kind of get to go back and look towards people I've learned from, kind of secretly reading all these books and gathering information. And when I was sitting down to make my list, like your book, Top Dog, was one of these books that just resonated with me these past 4 years. So when I was making my list, I was like, oh, I would love to reach out to Ashley. You immediately got back to me, and I'm absolutely honored and privileged to have you on this call today.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. It's a privilege to be.
So being a New York two-time bestseller, I wanted to dive into your book, Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing. And again, like the moment I read this book and the amount of value it added to me is one of these things I just wanted to share all your research with our listeners, but I wanted to kind of dive into this whole idea about competition. And you kind of frame it, you open up the book and you talk about, we get it wrong sometimes where, you know, we've heard this Anders Ericsson, the 10,000 hour practice rule, where that's going to lead to success. Like as long as we practice for 10 years with deliberate practice, that's going to help us be successful. That's going to help us win or lose. But in your book, you kind of challenge that and you say there's something missing in this success formula. So what is it about competition? Where do we get it wrong? And how do you actually define what competition is?
All right. So that's a lot of material. Let's start with one. If I forget, coming back to me. Well, you know, the Ericsson thing, and I think in some ways that story is overblown, right? Yeah. You don't need 10 years of experience to be a sprinter. In fact, sprinters seem to need significantly less experience to be at an elite level.
Yeah.
But to me, I was saying, okay, well, let's just for a second set aside that idea, because we can go back to it. I think that there's, you know, some things that are valuable in it, but some of it's kind of dispiriting, right? Okay. If I don't have 10 years full time to devote to something, should I even bother? Right.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So there are lots of things that we could talk about with that. But in terms of competition, I was like, okay, so I'm at the Olympics and presumably the 8 people on the track or in the pool or on the field all have 10 years of experience, but only one of them or a couple of them win.
Right.
So clearly just practice is not enough.
Yeah.
And we wanted to know what was it that actually was the difference between, you know, what did give someone that gold or that silver or send them home empty-handed. And really what was different there, because it just can't just on its own be practice.
Yeah.
Not even just competition, because presumably, well, by definition, to make it to the Olympics, you've already competed a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? You're probably the best in your country, if not the world.
Yeah.
But just because you're the best in the world doesn't mean you're going to go home with an Olympic medal.
Yeah.
So I thought that was, you know, a really interesting sort of question that people just hadn't talked about. And looking at the research, what we realized is that most of us, including myself at the time, had competition wrong.
Yeah.
For a bunch of different reasons. One is, I think there's sort of and this is even stronger maybe in the US and Canada and some of the other sort of what they would consider in research to be classically individualist countries. But lately there's been this idea that, competition is bad unless you're at the Olympics. We
Yeah,
have these
yeah,
huge asterisks. You shouldn't be competitive at work unless you want a promotion.
yeah,
Or, so in each time moment, there's this asterisk. And, when is being competitive good? Well, no, actually, competition is so last century. We're all about collaboration now.
yeah, yeah,
And again, thought about it, I'm like, okay, but if I'm on an Olympic basketball team, I'm collaborating with my team, but aren't I competing against the other team?
yeah,
Right? So
yeah,
these just kept being false choices, right? You don't have to compete or collaborate. You collaborate even with your competitors,
yeah,
right? Because you have to agree on what the rules are. You have to agree on what the situation and the terms and the outcome are. If you don't do that, you're going to have a lot of problems.
yeah,
And we're not talking just sports, but we're talking about business or anything else. So that sort of brought me back to, okay, well, so now that I'm understanding that there are problems in how we talk about competition and how we think about it. Uh, sorry, I'm on Do Not Disturb and it didn't work. Sorry.
yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
the the question then is, well, what is competition if we keep getting it wrong? And what I realized is that we think that the benefit of competition is the win.
Yeah, yeah,
And especially for coaches, that makes sense. But that's not actually true.
yeah.
The benefit of competition is not the win because I can't guarantee you the win. And I
Hmm.
also can tell you that sometimes you're going to win not because you were great, but because of dumb luck, right?
Right.
You
Yeah,
win because the other team's bus broke down and they had to either show up tired or just actually give up, right?
yeah,
So you can't necessarily say, well, the benefit was winning because I won. But no, you didn't win. The other team lost,
yeah, yeah,
right? Excuse me. So okay, now we have a problem. And that's pretty funny too, because whenever I tell like professional team coaches, the benefit of competition isn't winning, they're like, management's pretty focused on the WH. And I'm
yeah, 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 yeah.
like,
We're looking at our bottom line.
right, exactly. Excuse me. I've been recovering from strep throat and walking pneumonia, so apologies in advance if I'm coughing in people's ears. Mostly I'll be okay, but it's gonna
Yeah,
happen. So what we realized, especially realizing that people don't necessarily win because of something they did under their control, but other external factors.
yeah,
So, what is the benefit of competition? Because we keep ruling out all these things, we haven't come up with the answer. And we realize that the benefit of competition is improvement.
yeah,
I can't promise you a win. I wish I could. Many people have asked me, can't you? And I'm like, nope. Well,
yeah,
if you read Top Dog and you hire me as a consultant, you're going to promise I can win, right?
yeah.
No, I'm not going to promise you a win on a particular day.
Hmm.
I can't do that. What I
Right.
can do is say that if you compete and understand how competition works, you will improve, even in the moment when you lost, and importantly, in the moment when you win. Because again, we don't necessarily, that sort of expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. We kind of think that about that at wins, right?
Yeah.
We will belabor and take apart a loss, but how much do you take apart a win?
Right.
And you need to take apart wins because you may actually understand that there are opportunities for improvement in there, even though the outcome was what you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So the benefit of competition, not necessarily in the moment of competition, but over time, you will get better at competition. You will get better at the skills that you're using in this environment, which that's definitely going to happen. So
Yeah.
that's the benefit of competition. It's not the win. I want a win, obviously, but in terms of what can I promise you, it's improvement. And focusing on improvement is crucial because if you think about it, the better you are, the better your competition is going to get.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you would think, well, if I'm really great, that means I'm going to win more. No, actually, if you keep winning and you're outstanding, that just means you're in the wrong class of competition,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You need to be promoted to a new division or a new environment.
Yeah.
So the better you are and the more you compete, the more you're going to be competing against elite performers who are as good or better than you are.
Yeah.
So you have to continue to be focusing on that improvement so that you can keep that progress going and that movement going so that you do get the W.
Yes. Yes. And you do have my wheels turning right now, Ashley. So,
There's a
hearing you
lot
talk, like
there.
so many ideas just popped up as you're talking.
The first question you asked, I'm like, oh, that's an hour right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could just keep going all day on this one.
Yeah.
But just hearing you talk, like I think about the idea from John Wooden. I think about competitive greatness, and that's being your best when your best is needed, right? And
Yes.
then I think about, the thing you're talking about when we win, and John Madden immediately popped in my head because John Madden said winning is often the best deodorant because it covers up all the stuff that where we made mistakes, where it stinks and all that stuff.
Yep.
And like you said, we focus so much when we lose. We're like, oh, losing is our opportunity to learn. Losing is our opportunity to grow. But it's not just losing. It's when we win too. It's when we lose. Like there's always room for improvement, and that's what competition is about. It's just about improvement, right? And then you're talking about, and then I think about the original definition of that word competition, like comes from competere, where it means to strive with. So that's what you said. Like as we get better competing, we have to move up, and we're gonna bring the best out of our competition as well. So I think where we struggle is like looking at society and everything where it is, everything's about instant gratification and it's now social media. And heck, I work with high school athletes and now they can get paid. They can get NIL money to get paid as an athlete. So now they're chasing after the win. So they're cheating the process a little bit where they forget about the root cause. Like competition is about improvement.
Right. And that's leading into in sort of that chasing and that mindset in terms of, I have to win
Yeah.
is leads into one of the other things that I wanted to talk about with you, which is that sort of the difference between adaptive and maladaptive
Yes.
competition, right? And so what are we talking about here? An adaptive competition is when you use the competition in a beneficial way,
Yeah.
right? I don't mean like you actually get outcomes of this, but that, you respect your competitors, you pick and choose your competition,
Yeah.
right? You decide, when am I going to go all out? When is it, this one really doesn't matter. And you respect the rules of the game. You understand that you are not entitled to win. You're going to have to work for this. And
Yeah.
the maladaptive competitor is the person who thinks that they are in fact entitled to win and no one else does.
Yeah.
In fact, if you really understood my greatness, you would just give me the
Yeah.
joke.
Right.
The
Just
fact that
give it to me.
we're actually doing this competition is just a waste of everyone's time because
Yeah.
come on now, it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And when you think that way, rules don't apply.
Yeah.
Rules are a distraction
Yeah.
because again, you're just stopping me from the greatness, which that I have,
Yeah.
right? So maladaptive competitors don't respect their competitors. They don't respect the game itself. They don't respect the rules because they think all of those are a reflection on them.
Yeah.
The maladaptive competitor also doesn't pick and choose what's important. The
Yeah.
maladaptive competitor is the person who will compete for a promotion or a league championship or a parking space at the mall the week before Christmas with the
Yeah.
same blood sport,
Yeah.
right? This is the person no one wants to play board games with at home because they're the ones who are going to flip the board.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, we know those people, right?
Yeah.
So, so the maladaptive competitor is competing at this high level all of the time and feel they always win and flip out and are less interested in the rules. And
Yeah.
I thought that, that's really interesting because that old adage, it's not if how you win or lose, it's how you play the game.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I remember that one well.
We only tell that to the losers,
Right. Exactly.
right? We use character as a consolation prize.
Yeah.
But I've asked, in fact, I've actually said this to Olympic coaches. Wouldn't it be fascinating if when at the medal stadium and they hand you the flowers and the teddy bear and they kiss you on the cheek, they whisper in your ear, but it's not if you won or lost, it's how you played the game.
Yeah.
How much of an impact would that have? I don't know.
Right.
No, it doesn't happen. And every time I
Right.
talk to a coach about
Yeah.
it, I freak out.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right?
What just happened?
Yeah, but I think that's important to think about, that we only talk about that character is important in a losing context.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. That leads to maladaptive competition. That leads to that the only thing that matters is winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Characters for losers and characters not for losers. Characters for the best.
Yeah. And I think, picking up on that, a lot of times we miss out on that reflection piece then, because if we're only reflecting when we lose, right, we're missing out on that opportunity. So even when you're on that medal stand and they whisper that in your ear, it's like, oh, I do need to reflect on that because I can still get better, right? It's not just because I got the trophy. Like that doesn't define success. It's like, okay, what's my next level? What's the next version of myself? And I think we set our athletes up to fail that way sometimes because we just settle like, okay, we won, we're good, let's just move on.
Yes. And what's actually fascinating about this is that I recently wrote, I have a newsletter on Substack called Sherwood Report. And the
I,
Sherwood
I, lo- I love Sherwood. I love the Sherwood report.
So one of the most recent ones I wrote about, I think is one of the most important things I've written in years, which is about the fact that the science says failure is a great way to learn from
Yeah,
mistakes. But most of us don't actually learn from mistakes. We don't
yeah,
learn from failure because it's so
exactly.
upsetting. We just pretend it didn't happen. And if
Yeah,
you pretend it didn't happen, you're not going to actually learn from it.
right.
So if failure is so stigmatized that we have to pretend it out of existence, which I think we do, argu
Yeah,
arguably, and we don't naturally take apart our wins either, when are we learning?
exactly. Yeah.
Maybe during that practice when we're doing some skill training, but in terms of either outcome, I don't think we're learning from anything. And we really need to change that.
Yeah, and then coaches get frustrated because it's like, well, it's these scenarios like, oh, I taught you that yesterday, or we went through that yesterday, and learning is really not sticking. So that's a whole other conversation, is how we build better learning environments. But thinking about that and not learning from failures, like I wanted to talk to you about it, and this was probably one of my favorite parts of your book was looking at the differences between competition between males and females.
Mhm.
And we kind of dove into the what competition is, and I'm big on the how part. And for us as coaches, like we're responsible for the environment, we're responsible for the experience.
Mhm.
So how do we create better environments and experiences working with males and working with females athletes, because they respond to stress a little bit different, thinking about the female side versus males.
Mhm.
Males respond to odds a little bit different than females. So I was wondering if we can transition our conversation into this whole idea of the differences between males and females, competition, stress, and go from there in this conversation.
Sure, I would love to. But again, that's like 2 hours right there.
That's another 2 hours, but I think to tee it up a little bit, you talk about, we look at it a little bit different, with males and females, and you have a lot of great references with Anson Dorrance and his work with UNC soccer. So maybe we can talk a little bit about Anson, and because he worked with both males and females at UNC. Talk about what he learned and some of the differences he saw within working with those two environments.
Although it's interesting and important to note that arguably, even though he was successful with both coaching males and females in soccer, his success with females was exponentially
Was
more
huge,
than,
huge. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which I think most people would not have expected from a male coach.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So, yeah, and I think, yeah. So, well, it's interesting. So Anson is, the famous soccer coach, again, mostly for women,
Yeah,
had started coaching for men and women and at about the same time. And when he did, he approached coaching for the team for them as the same. They're both
yeah,
athletes. They're both going to be, straight. And what he realized pretty quickly was the techniques he used in Success for Men, not only did they not work for women, they often backfired.
yeah, yeah,
And so he sort of described in one thing that like his quintessential moment during a halftime when his team was losing, that he started screaming and he actually like threw a chair into the wall. No one was
Yeah.
hurt. This wasn't,
Yeah.
this wasn't a basketball scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But he was clearly, the fact that he would kick things and yell at things, and that would sort of fire up the guys to work in the next thing. If he
Yeah.
tried that with the women, they just burst into tears
Yeah. Yeah.
and they just completely shut down. There was no motivating factor in
Yeah.
that yelling part. So he realized that the most effective thing to do for the girls when they were struggling was not to yell at them at halftime. It was to just walk in and say, "How do you guys think we did?"
Yeah.
And immediately I missed that forward pass.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of the girls would start picking apart the stuff that they had done wrong and apologizing to their team.
Yeah.
I let you guys down. I can't believe this. There were still tears, but they weren't
Yeah.
tears, right? And so he realized that the social connection between the team was
Yeah.
so much more important for the girls than it was for the guys. The guys, even though they were on a team, were often still thinking about their individual success
Yeah.
and how they were performing, and another guy would slow them down, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to fuel their success. And that the girls were thinking about this much more in terms of, if I missed that pass, that I embarrassed someone or I let them down.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the major shifts that he had done. But he also then had to give them permission to compete,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the girls had sort of been trained, you're not supposed to compete. And we can go into the reasons why this is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he literally had, practices where he would just have players on one side of the pitch and on one side of the other, and they would just run into each other and just crash and knock each other out.
Yeah.
And literally walk out, with broken teeth and look like hockey games, I think, occasionally.
Yeah.
But he needed to have them approval to knock each other down and to knock their teammates down, or the opposition down, because were, again, since they were so focused on how someone else felt, to do that was just anathema. So he had to give them permission during practice. He had to give them, the ability to look at their ranking and to want to fire them up and say, is that good enough for you? Don't you want to be higher on the ranking?
Yeah.
Again, that's another really interesting thing. And in terms of gender differences, a study looked at a furniture company.
Mm-hmm.
And they posted, and it was a national company. So there was an email went out, here's this week's top ranking. And the whole company's sales dropped 26%.
Yeah.
And the reason was that the women kind of didn't expect they were doing that well. So when they got the list, they were like, yeah, I'm not doing so well. That's kind of what I thought. And the guys thought they were in the top 5. And to see and have everyone in the company know that they were actually in the bottom 10 destroyed them and they gave up. So it's interesting that ranking that Anson was doing motivated the girls because he gave them permission to dream higher, to want higher, and to fight for that top spot.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would have worked for the men. I don't think it would have, because the men already think of themselves as being number 1 or number 2, and they don't want evidence that they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, Anson he has his whole competitive cauldron. Like that's his whole environment, right? And I remember Mia Hamm shared a story where it's like she finally was able to walk in an environment where she could compete. And like you said, a lot of the times as coaches, like we don't put our females in that environment the right way to give them that permission to actually compete. And so there was a part in your book, I just wanted to read it real quick just to make sure I get it right. You said the myth about women don't like to compete is completely wrong. What we have to do is make a distinction between how hard someone competes and how eagerly someone chooses to compete.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that, like how do we, like Anson, how can we do that within our environment for our females?
Well, I think we need to back up a little bit and explain why.
Okay.
Because, why is it that because we already talked about how the outcome shouldn't be the focus, right?
Right. Yeah.
Should be focusing on is improvement. But it turns out actually that women only compete when we know we're going to win.
Right. Okay.
And guys assume they're going to win. And then after that go, yeah, but I'll win next time.
Yeah.
Or they attribute the loss to external factors. The ref didn't like me. The weather was bad.
Yep.
You screwed something up. but for those problems, I would have won. So I still think this wasn't actually successful because, it was that ref's fault, not mine.
Right. Yeah.
If it had a different ref, I totally would have won. So I would have won. So there's no
Yeah.
reason to beat myself up about the loss because I didn't actually lose. Other
Yeah.
people were the problem,
Yeah.
right? Women focus on the result,
Yeah.
the outcome. And if I lose once, I am less likely to even try and compete again. But so why is this outcome focus so much stronger even for women than it is for men? And it's to the point that, people go, oh, well, women can't compete. No, women totally compete. It's that they choose not to.
Right.
They do this odd calculation. They look around and they think really closely, am I going to succeed at this? And if I'm not, then they just don't try.
Yeah.
But so why is this so important to them? And for me, the research in this to me, Joyce Benenson, a researcher at Harvard,
Yeah. Yeah.
changed the way I see the world,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is that she showed that, as children, boys grow up in groups and girls grow up in
Yeah.
pairs.
Yeah.
We're not talking small differences. We're talking about boys spend about 73% of their time in a group and girls spend about 14% of their time. So this is not insignificant. And why is this so important is because if you think, what are the lessons of a group, right? If, just imagine you've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 middle school boys hanging out on a basketball court after school just for fun.
Yeah.
Well, one of them is the natural athlete who's just going to score bucket after bucket, not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be the class clown who just makes everybody laugh. There may even be a kid on the corner who's doing everyone else's homework
Yeah. Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
they can all keep playing.
I like that kid.
We like that kid.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to have these differences in abilities and skills because everybody has signed on to, but we're all participating in this one activity.
Yeah.
If you're going to be scoring for us and I'm going to make everybody laugh, and that's going to make it fun, and he's going to do our homework so we don't actually have to stop and have to go do our homework.
Right.
All of these different roles and responsibilities are great.
Yeah.
And at the same time, differences of opinion are okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But you have to focus on the goal, right? So if I'm on that, if I'm playing and I start going, I'm mad at you, you didn't help me enough during that test or whatever, someone else on the team is going to say, hey, we're not here to talk about school. We're here to play ball. Focus on the task.
Yeah.
Your personality you guys are hurting my game and my score, and you guys got to stop this personality thing and focus on the task.
Yeah.
But these differences of opinion are okay. Where do you want to go to grab something to eat after the game? Well, I want McDonald's. I want Five Guys. I want pizza. Okay, they're all legitimate ideas. We're all going to work it out and we'll have a vote or something, figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about the difference between that environment and what you do in a pair. Oh, another one of the things that is important, sorry, I forgot, with a group is, again, when we're talking about those differences of ability, right?
Yeah.
The guy who's the natural athlete can say, throw me the ball.
Right.
I
Yeah.
got the shot, right? So he can brag about his position because he needs you to actually know to throw him the ball. He's open. He got the shot.
Right.
Right? If he didn't yell at you, you wouldn't know because you're focused.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you think about a pair dynamic, there are 2 little girls playing patty cake or something.
Yeah.
All their brothers are doing the basketball stuff. And there is no goal to their activity. The goal is the personal interaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no third-party neutral mediator when they're arguing to tell them knock it off and focus on the goal because the goal is the relationship.
Yeah.
And in a pair, if your goal is the relationship, the goal is to continue that dynamic going on, which means you don't want to brag.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to argue.
Yeah.
You don't want to assign roles and responsibilities because what you want to do is actually show that you and I are the same.
Yeah.
And we have so much in common that we should just keep going.
Yeah.
So there's no competition because to compete means risk losing your best friend.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're going to compete and you're going to risk losing your best friend, well, honey, you better win.
Yeah.
That's what we start teaching them, and that's what they
Yeah.
start them into it. So they become very careful. They're not going to compete at something that's going to give them social ostracism or losing friends or getting, fingers pointed. She thinks she's all that. Unless they're absolutely going to be successful, it's just not worth the cost.
Yeah.
And this, um, you'll appreciate this. When we were actually reading this research, my co-author Poe Bronson was coaching his daughter's soccer team, and they were about 7 and 8 at the time.
Yeah.
And we were both reading this, and I work with kids. He works with kids. He has kids. And we were like, "Do you really think this happens?" And he
Yeah.
called me on Monday. He's like, "Oh my God, you can't believe what just happened on Saturday at the game."
Yeah.
And I said, "What?" And he said, "My daughter's team would kick the ball, and then they would let the other team kick the ball. And then they would
Yeah. Yeah.
like they were taking turns with
Yeah.
other team
In a game.
in
Yeah.
a game." And he
Yeah.
and he said, I blew I took a timeout, and I'm like, "It's always your turn. Don't give them the turn."
That's awesome.
And even then, it was just really hard. And he realized that, he would do group activities, and within the group, blue practice shirts and yellow practice shirts or something, right?
Yeah.
Within the group, as soon as he did that, the little girls would immediately look to the girl next to them and say, "You'll be mine." And they would pair up within the group.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Going, "No, it's the whole group." So we really had to teach the girls it's okay to compete against your team. You don't need a pair, you don't need a buddy.
Yeah.
And these early, and as silly as all of this sounds, Joyce Benenson found that college educated successful women will never talk about their own achievements unless they
Right.
know the person they're talking to is more successful than they are,
Right. Yeah.
which is a problem in like job interviews. Things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, or just, random networking. They're like, "Oh, I do okay."
Yeah.
So these early patterns really persist, and they even persist on a date, because now you have a pair, right? But one of them has grown up in pairs and one of them has grown up in groups.
Yeah.
We like subconsciously understand these differences. So in a date, the girl goes, "Gee, I don't know. I don't really do that much at work. What do you do?" And the guy's like,
Right.
"I'm a tycoon."
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I do this, and this. Yeah.
And we understand, we understand the rules. Go, "Okay, I get it." So
Yeah.
even in a pair, a guy acts as if he's in a group, and even in a group, a girl acts like there's a pair dynamic going on. So
Yeah.
we have to give them this permission, like Anson did, where he's focused
Yeah.
on what the ranking is. He's focused on the team, to have them understand that it's okay to compete, that the other girls on their team still cared about them, loved them, supported them, and the fact that they were going to prove that they were best that week was not going to destroy that relationship.
Yeah.
But it also took coaching from him on terms of the girls saying, when she's better than you, you shouldn't be cutting her down. You should be going, "I need to practice more to beat her."
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very different mindset that's really important.
Yeah, Anson was really smart too, because I remember a conversation. I was listening to a podcast where he would bring them in, and he would show them where they ranked, but he was really smart about it. One he was the data, but the girls are all looking at the numbers, not thinking he's the data. But then he put them into that call of action, like, "I know you're 10 today, but I'm pretty sure you can get the 6 next week, right?" But he
Mhm.
was super intentional, like you said, like he had to figure out, I had to form these bonds first. There's that adage, like, females have to bond to battle, where guys, we just battle the bond, right? We just throw down, we beat each other up, and like we're good. But now what you're saying, and with your research and backing it up, like, we have to be more intentional with building connections within our female team dynamics to make sure we can bring the best out of them.
Well, and also most importantly, giving them permission to win
Yeah. Yeah.
and giving them permission to lose, right? You
Yeah.
have to tell them that it's okay to compete.
Yeah.
And if you lose, we will still love you. And if you win, we will still love you, because they are not sure about either of those,
Yeah.
right? They really
Yeah.
don't think either of those are true, which means they're just not going to even engage. They're not even going to be on that team because
Yeah.
it's just too stressful. because, you know, I guess the ultimate thing for a soccer, girl in a soccer team would be that they always tie in zero.
Yeah, that would be the
I
best. Yeah.
never won. I never disappointed
No,
anyone.
no
Never did anything.
PKs, nothing, just end the game. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
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 And it's crazy. You think about when you build that environment, they'll just look at, I mean, still using Anson as the example. I mean, 22 national championships. Like
Yeah.
when they have that permission, when they feel connected with each other, when they can go out there and be themselves and just compete and understand it's not going to damage relationships. Like we have to do this together. Just look at the run they just went on. It's fun. They actually just won their 23rd national championship, and Anson had just stepped down, but that environment stayed there, and they kept going. Just won their 23rd.
The culture's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that, Ashley, I just wanted to kind of close out. So we talked about what competition was. We talked about the differences, right? I think one area we also struggle with is this feedback and giving feedback as coaches. So thinking about males and females and how we can give better feedback. And again, you mentioned your Sherwood report, which I love, and you have two great articles about feedback. Can you talk to our listeners real quick about what is feedback and how can we be better at giving feedback at the right time, how to give it, understand who we're talking to? So can we wrap up real quick on your ideas on feedback?
Well, I'll give you a couple of the top lines.
Yeah.
Look and read the Sherwood Report or email me or something on more. I think, so feedback is not empty praise.
Yeah.
I mean, technically that is a type of feedback, but that's not the feedback we want to give, right?
Right.
Good feedback should be giving you input that actually catalyzes new thinking
Yeah.
process. So that's different, than feedback generally. What's good feedback is giving you a tool to think differently about a problem that you're having.
Yeah.
Right? If I have to give you the same feedback, even though if it's accurate 10 times and you're not changing your behavior, that might be because you're not listening, but it's probably because I gave you bad feedback.
Right.
I did not, even if I gave you some correct information, it did not catalyze a new approach in your answer. So it was probably my bad, right?
Yeah.
I didn't give you that direction. So good feedback is giving you the tools, and what the right type of feedback is going to depend on your athlete. It's going to depend on their gender, their age, their experience, right? Novices want to know that they can be good at something.
Yeah.
Because they're not really sure. They're not committed to this yet, right? They want to, but you don't lie at them. They know they suck.
Yeah.
But that also, this is another time when we wrap back into what's the goal of competition. If I'm brand new at something and I know I suck, then the goal can't be winning because I'm going to give up. I suck.
Right. Yeah.
It has to be about improvement. You were so much better than last week.
Yeah.
You still suck, but you are so much better.
Just a little less.
Right. But if you think about that from the elite performer, right, going back to my Olympians, focusing on them you kind of have to focus on them for outcomes, because focusing on the rate of improvement, it may take them a year to shave off a half a millisecond, a millisecond of time. And that's enough between the gold and not. But so you need to focus for them on not the rate of improvement, but the actual improvement itself, right? Or consistency or technique. So there's not one perfect rate, perfect type of feedback that everyone can get. There are just guidelines in terms of, different personalities. The perfectionist doesn't need, 9 positive things and 1 negative thing.
Yeah. The magic ratio.
Right. The magic ratio, there's
it doesn't work
behind it. It does not work. The sandwich technique, positive, positive, does not work.
Yeah.
You have to think about it in terms of who is this person, where are they at, and what are they doing to give them the room to actually improve. And the focus, the best feedback gives them a way to recognize the problem and then come up with a solution on their own.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they own it. And then say, that sounds like that will work. Come back and tell me how it went. So you are positive that their solution will be successful. That's where positivity comes in. It's not just, oh, wow, you're just really funny and we love you on the team
Yeah.
and you're really great. And oh, by the way, if you come late one more time, we're going to cut you. Right. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
but oh my God, when you show up, we love you so much.
Right.
That's terrible feedback.
Yeah.
What's better feedback is, hey, being on time is really important. Why aren't you on time? Can you come up with some fixes? That sounds great. Let's work on this a week from now and see if it actually made a difference.
Yeah.
Because then they walk out. Because the goal of feedback should not be feeling like, you're beaten when you come out. That's not productive.
Yeah.
It's the idea that, oh, I had a problem. I may or may not have realized it, or maybe I did, but I didn't know what to do about it. So I'm going to pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
You walk out going, oh, I'm empowered. I have an approach. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. I can go to coach and say, I tried that, but it didn't really work. And then
Yeah.
coach will help me figure out a new way to fix the problem. So
Yeah.
that way, coach believes in me, in my ability to improve,
Yeah.
giving me the time to do that as opposed to that all or nothing thing. And, right now we're just so obsessed, especially with kids, in terms of all positive feedback all the time. And it is a terrible approach. For
Yeah.
one thing, they know you're lying.
Yeah.
They know when they suck.
100%. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Totally know
Yeah.
they're lying, right? So it hurts your credibility and it doesn't help them actually get better
Yeah.
because instead the message is, failure is so terrible, we have to pretend it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
innately great. And that leads to that maladaptive competitiveness
Yeah.
that we were talking
Yeah.
about at the beginning. So what we want to do is say, train the adaptive competition. It takes a long time to get good. That's okay.
Yeah.
You need to do is learn from your competitors, respect the person who's better than them, ask them for help, and grow. And so the great feedback empowers that mindset.
I love that. Love it. Yeah. Listening to you talk, I think about how we came off of this self-esteem era where we had to give everyone the positive praise, no matter what. Like you said, if think about a baseball game, you strike out 30 times in a row, like you're the best batter out there. It's like, no, you're not. It again, circling back to our guy, Anson. Anson has a great line where he says, our challenge as coaches is to get everyone's personal narrative to the truth as fast as possible. Right. So giving that honest feedback, that accurate assessment of where you're at. And I see a lot of kids struggle with that because they get fed all this false praise. So they have no accurate assessment of who they are. And then they go off to college, right? And you see all the madness with college where everyone's jumping ship and going to the portal and all that stuff because they never really had that honest assessment of where they're back, or they didn't have a coach that gave them that right feedback, or parents were trying to protect them rather than prepare them. So that piece, this whole feedback piece, I think is critical, and we have to do a better job as coaches so we are setting our kids up to take on that idea that this is theirs, like they own it and they can improve.
Absolutely. And honest feedback. Again, the goal is not to break people,
Right.
especially children. We don't want to,
Yep.
right? We just want to give them the tools to be better and have them know that we're an honest voice, that they can actually
Yes.
ask and trust us when there's so many other people who aren't giving them true information.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. I when I live in DC, but for 20 years I ran this inner city tutoring program in Los Angeles. And there was this one young woman who she started coming to tutoring when she was 7.
Yeah.
And when she was about 16, she was writing an essay in high school. And we were going through it and we were, line by line, catching all the mistakes and everything. And I pointed to a sentence and I said, that's lovely. And she shot out of her chair like I'd
Yeah.
given her an electric shock. And she said, you've never said anything like that before. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you've never written anything lovely before, but that's
Right. Just telling the truth.
and she was so grateful and so excited. And I hadn't broken her. She'd been coming to tutoring for 10 years at that point, but she knew that she could trust me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I actually gave her a powerful compliment, it physically hit her.
Yeah.
And she was just beaming and she was so excited. And I'm like, okay, we got other work to do with these other sentences. But
Right. Yeah.
but it showed her her growth, and she knew I was a trustworthy voice.
Yeah.
And, and I mentor her today, and she'll call me when there's a trouble, and she'll be like, "Hey, what do I do about this?" Or "I did this." And, and I get to be there for the true celebrations and the occasional heartache. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, but I think as a coach, that is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
And it can be hard, especially if, parents and sometimes I hear parents are bad, grandparents are the worst. So,
Yeah.
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 But if there's parental pressure or other things that are saying, no, you have to tell my kid they're great, that can be hard. But again, they're not fooled,
Yeah.
and they know when someone is an honest broker, and they really respect that.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And Ashley, we're kind of running short on time, so I wanted to see if there's any final thoughts you had to leave our coaches as far as winning and losing, competition, feedback, anything you can leave us with as a final thought.
Well, I'll try and wrap them all together because they're all
All right.
connected. If we think about, if people are stressed during a competition. Oh, by the way, if you have, in competition versus like in practice or a meeting or something, right? Like any piece of feedback in competition is exponentially more important and taken seriously than it was in practice. You have
Right.
to scale
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
the amount of feedback you give, even if it's the same thing. If in practice you have this normal joke at the end of every practice, remember, safety first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a total joke. After 5 times, everyone may say it in unison, right? Yeah, safety first. If you, at the end, if you're in the locker room before the competition and you go, now remember, safety first, they
Yeah.
will panic because oh my God, did we forget a piece of safety equipment?
Right. Right.
Did somebody
Yeah.
get hurt? Right? Even the same exact feedback that you gave all along in competition just completely reframes them.
Right.
So, but I think what's important to think about is, when you're stressed, and you think I can't succeed at this task, change the goal to
Yeah.
something you think you can succeed at.
Yeah.
Not to the point where it's a cakewalk. You still are going to have to fight for it, but you're thinking
Yeah.
to yourself, I think I can succeed. And then when you do, then you roll to the next slightly more.
Yeah.
You keep moving forward into this focus. And you're like, this team is so much better than me. We are just going to get our butts kicked no matter what I do.
Yeah.
Change the goal to not a point spread,
Yeah.
but improvement. What are
Yeah.
you going to learn from this experience?
Yeah.
The goal should always be, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to walk out better than when I started.
Yeah.
That's what the goal of competition is. That's what the goal of feedback is. That's what our goal as humans should be, that we are motivated to get better every day.
Yeah. Well, with that, Ashley, I can say I'm leaving this call a better person today. I mean, I was so excited when I first sent that email. I'm like, man, I hope Ashley gets back. This is gonna be awesome. Like, if Ashley gets back to me and I can learn from Ashley, this is gonna be incredible. So I can't thank you enough. If our listeners wanted to connect with you some more, where could they reach out?
AshleyMerryman.com is my website, and there's a way to send emails, or obviously my Substack. Subscribe to
Yeah.
that. You can also
Yes.
send
Yes.
comments or questions through Substack. Again, it is the Sherwood Report,
Yes.
using science to see the forest in your trees.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love getting the email alerts when it pops up in my email. So, again, Ashley, I can't thank you enough for being part of the Being Champions podcast. Again, I'm leaving better today, and our listeners are going to get so much value from our conversation. So, thanks again.
thank you so much for having me, and have a happy holidays.
You too. Thanks. Well, coaches, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ashley. I walk away from this conversation with so many great takeaways. I mean, when Ashley broke down what the purpose of competition is and the true meaning of competition, I mean, it's more than just winning and losing. It's about being our best, right? And some of the things that Ashley talked about as far as the differences between males and females when it comes to competition. And I think the big thing is that there's, the myth about women not wanting to compete, but that's not true. We just have to actually set up the environment where they feel safe. They feel like they can bring their best. And then when you do that, when they have the relationship with their coaches, when they have the relationship with their teammates, they will be willing to go to battle. But again, we have to bond first for them to go to battle. And they're going to compete just as hard as any male athlete out there. And some of the things Ashley talked about with feedback and understanding the true purpose of feedback. We're really trying to catalyze new thinking in our athletes or the person we're giving feedback to. So that feedback has to be specific. It has to make sure we're challenging them to get better through this feedback. But again, it really comes back to our environment. Are we setting up environments where we're diving into the true purpose of competition? Are we allowing both our male and female athletes to thrive within our environment? And are we giving effective feedback where we're challenging them to be the best? So for us as coaches, I think we have to do a hard look at what we're doing every single day and to ensure that we are bringing out the best in each and every one of our athletes, where competition is more than just winning and losing. And really, we're challenging each other to bring the best out of each other every day, and that's what it's all about. So look at that environment. Are your male and female athletes able to thrive? And are we bringing the best and getting the best out of everyone every single day? So I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I really appreciate y'all tuning in, and hope you tune in next week for the Being Champions podcast.